Purpose of the research. Research is finding out what we don't know already. No one knows everything, but everyone knows something. There are two basic purposes for research: to learn something or to gather evidence. For this research, we are asked to research John Walker and understand why he originally got involved with espionage. Using the information that we have learned throughout the semester, we will figure out John's motives and reasonings through his actions. The purpose of the research project is to connect what we have learned with different aspects of this case. Source evaluation. Sources that was used throughout this project have been extremely useful. Many of the sources that were used show many different aspects of his life, such as his early life to his conviction. A lot of the articles told about his behaviors, which in other cases it was more difficult to get the type of information. The sources range from websites, books, to scholarly articles. Evaluation of research. The world is full of information to be found. However, not all of it is valid, useful, or accurate. Evaluating sources of information that you or consider using in your writing is an important step in any research. The research used containing the points that were learned throughout this class. For example, motives, types of intelligence that were used, communications, etc. Each person in our group had to find sources that were reliable and were not websites such as Wikipedia. The final evaluation of John Walker was that all of the sources that were used for this project were very useful and had all the information that we were looking for.
John Anthony Walker was born on July 28, 1937. His mother, Peggy, was an Italian-American, and his father, John Walker Sr., was a film marketer for the Warner Brothers. This job got him very good money. He was away from home a lot, and he drank a lot, and his wife and him frequently experienced physical altercations. On his way back from a business trip, he got in a bad car accident, lost his job, and began drinking more and more. This led to more and more physical altercations between the married couple. John Walker claimed that at 10 years old, he plotted the death of his father. When John Walker Sr. got in the car accident and lost his job, his family became poor after paying all the hospital bills. John Walker decided to get a job and save up his money. He picked up a few small jobs and saved up enough money to buy a car by 16 years old. His father forced him to go to St. Patrick's High School. He did not do well in school. He didn't try to be involved in any functions or try to excel at anything at all in high school. John Walker hated high school. He began pulling pranks that eventually grew more and more serious. He started with egging cars, to stealing money from unattended bags, to making brass knuckles, and then even to starting fires. At 18 years old, John Walker was arrested for breaking into a store to get parts for his car. When his father was asked to bail him out of jail, his father refused and left him in there for a few more nights. John Walker ended up receiving probation, but his brother Arthur got him out of probation by convincing him to join the Navy.
Recruitment. Walker was not recruited by the Soviets. He walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. John Walker Jr. voluntarily offered his services with initial confidential documents in hand. He was considered a primary agent. This means he was a person with direct access to sensitive information. John Walker Jr., however, recruited his friends and family later on and created a spy ring. He recruited friend Jerry Whitworth, brother Arthur Walker, son Michael Walker, and attempted to recruit his daughter Laura Walker. Tradecraft. Walker was given a schedule of dates when he would get paid and when to drop off the information. This included pictures and text of locations at the dead drops. The dead drop was the place where the Soviets would communicate what they needed and wanted from Walker next. It was the most effective and secure way to communicate without getting caught. The dead drop also provided sources to tell Walker where the next drop would be. Walker used a camera and photocopiers to obtain his information. Tradecraft continued. Walker would have also obtained documents with aid of copy machines in the naval base and take them out with him. Sensitive information that he gave to the Soviets, data on QWR-37 cipher system, data about KG-13, KL-11, KL-47 cipher machines, tactical manuals dealing with details of missile defense systems, about U.S. warships and missiles on cruise ships. He also gave away cryptographic data, key lists, and nuclear submarines.
Next, we will address John Walker's psychological issues. Walker likely had narcissistic personality disorder, which would explain his grandiosity of thought as well as a protective factor for his actual low self-esteem. Walker saw himself as superior to others and actually felt that he was held back by others' incompetence. He even stated that the FBI were fools for not using his talent as a double agent. Those with narcissistic personality disorder often hold relationships that exploit others, the other party, as he did with his friend, his brother, and also his son, whom he coaxed into spying for him. This diagnosis would also explain John Walker's drinking problem. Walker also showed a tendency toward antisocial behavior, which is common in narcissistic personality disorder. When an individual's ego is threatened, you tend to see aggression. Walker's antisocial tendencies can be seen clearly in his early delinquent behavior, including burglary and theft. There's a possibility that Walker had a mood disorder. Bipolar disorder would explain his mood fluctuations with his some grandiose states, and as in between with more depressive states. And often he felt that he was the best at what he did and the best at spying. And there were other times where he seemed more depressed and felt like his career was in jeopardy and that it was coming near an end to his spying career. The diagnosis of narcissistic personality disorder and bipolar disorder are often confused, and it can be difficult to distinguish the two, because with both you get the grandiose states, and then when the ego is threatened with narcissistic personality disorder, you can see depressive states. It would need to be determined if Walker was displaying true manic and depressive episodes with periods of normality seen in between. Walker's psychological issues can likely be explained by his early family life. Walker's father was an alcoholic and severely abusive towards him and towards his mother as well. And antisocial behavior and personality disorders are often a response to trauma and abuse, which are clearly accounted for in.
Conclusion to this PowerPoint: the Navy was severely damaged by Walker's espionage, and with this the Soviets walked away with a gain in Navy warfare. He was spying from 1968 to 1985 with the help of fellow family members that he recruited, one being his son, into spying for the KGB. Walker was looking at John Walker. Some learning points that we could learn from is looking back at his childhood. He had a traumatic childhood. His father descended into alcoholism, and with this he lost his job and his family went into bankruptcy, so he had to move to by his grandparents. And a little bit later on, at this time he commits burglary, and he's offered either jail time or going into the military, and he obviously chooses the military and is in the military for 20 years. But with this, he makes his own beliefs about the Cold War, and from a website that I found on EBSCO by Bluet, he talks about how John Walker claims that the information he provided allowed the Kremlin to see that the Reagan administration was not preparing for a nuclear war and helped lead to the fall of the USSR. Walker explains his motivation. He was upset at the dangerous and expensive falsehoods of the Cold War. He thought the assassination of President Kennedy was an organized coup by the government leaders, and he wanted the money. Looking at that, by him saying that when he was arrested, that he wanted the money, and looking back, he gained so much money from spying. There could have been a red flag up that he's not the only one that knew his own beliefs, so somebody could have overheard him and reported that, hey, this guy's talking about how, he wants the money from the Cold War, he's in the Navy, doesn't believe that it's, it's all right and everything. And it's kind of hard to look at and see how he recruited so many family members to become spies, and it wasn't caught on to it. So many things to this day can be learned from the Walker spy ring, and it's still looked at today because
if given the opportunity to interview John Walker, these are some questions that would be included. What was your relationship with your mother? We know his relationship with his father was very dysfunctional, poor, and I was just wondering if his relationship with his mother was any better, if he was closer to his mother because of the abuse by his father to both of them, or if he resented his mother for staying with his father for so long. I also would want to know what his role in his children's life were when they were growing up. I know that he was away a lot because he was in the Navy, and at times they did not live together. They lived in separate states. But when he was around, was his relationship good with them? Did they resent him for being so far away? Or did they look up to him as a role model? Another question that would be included was, what made you decide to open a bar? When John Walker and his wife moved down to Norfolk, they bought a house and redid it and made it into a bar, and part of the reason John Walker began committing espionage was because of his failing business. I would just want to know if it was a dream of his or if it was something that he just thought was a good idea and just didn't execute it right. Also, what initially gave you the idea to bring secret documents to the KGB? I know that he was having money problems with his failing business, and he wasn't getting the money that he wanted to receive from the Navy, and his marriage was being strained. But, what made him think that bringing secret documents to the KGB was number one? Why not just abandon your failing business, and that would get rid of a lot of monetary stress. How were you able to fake a background check? He faked a background check once. I just wanted to know if it was difficult for him, and did he retire from the Navy earlier than expected to avoid faking another background check and being caught? And because he retired from the Navy, that is why he ended up recruiting 3 other people that were close to him to get secrets for him. But he could have avoided all that if he just didn't retire from the Navy. And we were wondering if he retired from the Navy because he didn't want to fake another background check. and if that played a role in why he retired from the Navy earlier. Also, was money your only motive? I know it was a huge thing. Also, the personality disorders and psychological issues played a big part in it. But I was just wondering did you like the thrill of spying? Like, did that play a role in why you committed espionage for so long? The cases that I found that were extremely close to his was Ronald William Pelton. He was a communication specialist for the National Security Agency, and he also worked for the Soviet Union, just like John Walker did. He also began his espionage because of money problems. Not only did he do that, but he also walked into the Soviet embassy in Washington, D.C. Although he didn't keep his job with the NSA, he went to the Soviets shortly after resigning from the NSA. Whereas John Walker kept his job as long as he could. Ronald William Pelton was also arrested in 1985. 1985 was dubbed the year of the spies. That is where several spies that worked for the government were arrested for committing espionage. Another case similar to John Walker was Robert Hansen. He worked for the FBI, just like John Walker worked for the government and the Navy. He worked for the Soviet Union, and he also approached the Russians with FBI classified information. John Walker and Robert Hansen both are narcissists, and they have the same personality traits, or similar personality traits. They're very manipulative, and they don't really have remorse for what they've committed. They think that they're the best at what they do. They have similar traits like that. Also, they both use the dead drop technique, where they take the information and they put it in a pre-disclosed meeting spot. So they just put the information there, and then they walk away, and then they go to another pre-disclosed spot to pick up their money.